Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are unpacking a truly fascinating local political debate that is happening right now in the city of Rotterdam. And we're going to do it by looking at the hard data. We're diving into a recent blog post that actually fact-checks the claims made by local politicians to see what is really going on beneath the surface.
Now, you might be thinking, no way, right? It sounds like a total paradox, but this is the central, really intriguing premise of the political blog post we're analyzing today. The blog asks a super provocative question. When a political party fights for universal benefits for all elderly people, are they actually just subsidizing the wealthiest demographic in the whole country? Well, to understand how we even get to this question, we have to look at the new government forming in Rotterdam.
So this is where our story begins. The new coalition agreement is titled Vaart maken, which translates to speeding up. This new city government is formed by a group of parties, PRO, VVD, D66, Volt, and CDA. After years of the city going in a different political direction, this new progressive coalition is aiming to boost the city with some pretty major changes.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, the new coalition. Second, the socialist backlash. Third, checking wealth data. Fourth, the transit debate. Fifth, housing and parking. And finally, a progressive contradiction. All right, let's jump right in.
Section 1. The new coalition. Let's set the stage by looking at exactly what this new government wants to achieve.
According to the official municipal documents, the coalition has some massive ambitions. Their primary goals include building 15,000 new homes by the year 2030 to really tackle the housing crisis head-on. They also want to transform Rotterdam into the strongest and greenest economy in Europe, and they want to make it the absolute best city for a child to grow up in, focusing heavily on fighting poverty and debt for local families.
Section 2. The socialist backlash. As you might expect, not everyone is happy with these plans, which sets up the central conflict of the blog post we're exploring today.
SP Rotterdam's leader, Emmen Bazulo, didn't hold back at all. He states, PRO VVD, D66, Volt, and CDA make the city unaffordable. The SP claims that working people and those with a small purse are being hit really hard by the new coalition's plans. Specifically, they are furious about the abolition of free public transit for the elderly and the introduction of higher taxes for parking your car.
Section 3. Checking the wealth data. The SP claims these policies hurt the vulnerable. So let's see how the blog post fact-checks this exact claim using official data from the CBS, which is the National Statistics Agency of the Netherlands.
The sheer scale of wealth inequality here is staggering. Based on CBS data for early 2023, the top 10% of households own 56% of all the wealth in the country. That is a massive piece of the pie. The next 80% own the remaining 44%, and the bottom 10%, they actually have negative wealth, meaning they literally have more debts than assets. Just to make sure we're all entirely on the same page here, let's quickly define what we mean by assets, or vermogen, as they say in Dutch. Your assets are simply the total value of everything you own, like the money sitting in your bank account, plus the value of your house, minus any debts you owe, like a mortgage. Basically, it's a measure of your overall financial safety net.
And this brings us right to the core argument of the blog post. The blog points out that in the Netherlands, the demographic group that holds the most assets, the most wealth overall, is actually the elderly. Because many older folks have spent decades paying off their mortgages, they are sitting on a massive amount of wealth. So the blog argues that by screaming for universal benefits for all elderly people, the Socialist Party is actually, maybe accidentally, fighting on behalf of the country's wealthiest demographic.
Section 4. The public transit debate. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is seeing how this wealth data plays into the highly debated topic of public transit.
Okay, so previously, the city of Rotterdam provided free public transit for all elderly residents, completely regardless of how rich or poor they were. The new coalition is changing this by replacing that broad, universal free transit with a very targeted benefit, 475 euros loaded onto a Rotterdam card, specifically for low-income pensioners.
You might hear the term AOW thrown around a lot in this debate. AOW is simply the legislative pension age in the Netherlands. It's the age when citizens officially start receiving their state pension and are formally considered elderly in the eyes of these local policies.
So, why 475 euros? Well, the blog explains that this specific budget is a direct replacement for the public transit benefit. It perfectly covers the cost of a yearly local transit subscription with the RET.
But here's the twist. By putting it on the Rotterdam card, low-income elderly citizens actually get a lot of flexibility. They can use it at the RET for transit, sure, but if they don't need a bus pass, they can spend that money in various local shops or at museums instead. The blog argues this is just much fairer than giving free bus rides to wealthy retirees who can easily afford it themselves.
Section 5. Parking and Housing Plans. Let's shift gears and look at the final two major debate points addressed in the blog: the expansion of paid parking into neighborhoods like Ommoord, and the city's overarching housing strategy.
First up, parking. The SP is very angry about parking becoming more expensive. But the blog references a report from CE Delft, which is an independent research organization. They calculated that a single parking space on the street doesn't just come out of thin air for free. In fact, it costs society roughly 1,000 euros per year to maintain.
What do we mean by societal costs? Think of them as the hidden shared expenses a community pays. A parking spot takes up scarce public space that could be used for a playground or a bike lane, and it requires constant maintenance. The blog points out that when parking is free or super cheap, the city is essentially subsidizing car owners. Asking people to pay for parking permits is really just asking them to cover their fair share of these societal costs, especially as funding from the national government continues to decrease.
Now let's look at housing. The coalition has a really massive goal of building 15,000 homes by 2030. That breaks down to 4,500 social rental homes, 5,500 in the middle segment, and 5,000 in the higher segment. The blog highlights that they aim to build 3 times as many houses as the previous coalition period did.
To hit these targets, the city wants to build fast. The blog explains that housing in the Netherlands has become a massive financial asset, making homeowners significantly richer year over year. But the new coalition's primary goal is to build enough homes so that no one has to sleep on the street, even if it means slightly decreasing the skyrocketing value of existing houses. It's a necessary trade-off to ensure everyone has a roof over their head, rather than just protecting the wealth of people who already own homes.
Section 6. A progressive contradiction? This brings us to our final section, where we pull all this evidence together to look at the blog's ultimate conclusion.
Ultimately, the blog concludes that the SNP's populist approach is fundamentally flawed. By fighting to keep universal free transit for all elderly people and fighting against parking fees, the blog argues that the Socialist Party is actually defending subsidies that heavily benefit the asset-rich. According to the author, true progressive politics shouldn't be about giving free things to wealthy retirees. Instead, it should be about redirecting that money to build homes and give targeted financial help to the low-income families who truly need it most.
So, we end with this thought-provoking question for you to consider. What makes a policy truly progressive? Is it providing universal benefits for absolutely everyone, regardless of how much wealth they have? Or is it using evidence-based policies to target support strictly to those who need it most? It's a fascinating debate about the future of local policy in Rotterdam. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the data, and I'll catch you next time.